Hi. So, I very rarely get to do videos, and you know why now. So we've been asked by a couple of people now about integrated bypasses and fuel line bypasses. Basically, this is something which on an injected engine, when you're running at high pressure on something like a Rotax 912 IS, 915 IS, 916 IS, or any of the ULPower engines, there is a need to have what's called a restricted bypass to relieve any vapor issues on the fuel lines. Now, why might you get vapor into a fuel system, and why do you need this restricted bypass? There's lots of ways vapor can get into a fuel system. Now, if you've got a carburetted engine and you get air inside your fuel line, when it reaches the carb bowl, it vents. So a little bit of air gets in every now and then. It's not the end of the world. On an injected engine, the fuel line is under pressure. So if air gets ingested or vapor builds up and it gets through the fuel pump, what will happen is now you've got air under pressure. Now, air or vapor under pressure acts like a spring. It's springy. Liquids are solid. Now, much as these pressure systems are running at 3 bar, when the air or vapor gets over the injector opens, the air gets into the cylinder. That's the way it gets out, or it makes its way all the way back past the fuel regulator and goes back to the tanks. Now, I've got these lovely documents here that we're about to send out to a customer. And if I just open this one up here, we show the traditional way of addressing this. I don't know if my lovely assistant can zoom in on this, but the traditional way was we would run a bypass line on the outside of the engine. And this is the way it's done on Rotax engines, for example. Is on a Rotax engine, they don't have an integrated bypass. You have an external bypass block which runs between the supply and the return lines. And all it really is it is just a tiny hole in the line that allows, basically it changes the way things work between the pressure line and the return line. Now, our friends at ULPower, they are amazing, they're incredible, because they were like, well, hang on a minute, let's build this into the engine. One, it is much easier, it reduces the number of connections, it actually works really well. So what we have on a ULPower engine, and this is what we're going to focus on now, is here we have a beautiful device which carries the pressure regulator in there. Now on our engine, if Patricia just comes closer here, if you look on this engine, that is the pressure regulator carrying block, and you may just see there's a little dimple there. That dimple tells me this is a latest edition engine with a built-in restricted bypass. Now, if you've got an older ULPower engine and you want to have a built-in restricted bypass, which is a really good idea, then we do this as a little add-on kit. And what you do is you remove the old one and fit the new one. It's not difficult. There's a little picture guide here. As everything with ULPower, we love our picture guides. So you've got your picture guide going through on what to do, and the whole kit comes together to be able to do the change. Now, the kit itself is a new restrictor carrier, regulator carrier, some seals, gaskets and clamps. Now, in order to do the job, basically what you've got to do is you've got to drop this part of the manifold off, get in here, remove the current carrier and fit the new one. So when the new one goes in there now, if you can imagine, if we look here and here is where our injectors are going, so our injector carrier is doing its job. This location has our fuel restrictor there. Okay, and then on the back here, this is where the fuel is coming in, and that's where the fuel is coming out. And this basically in here is saying, I'm not letting the fuel go through until we get up to pressure. What you can't see, because it is so small and it's built in with the wonders only available with high-speed precision CNC machining, which our friends at ULPower are excellent at with their amazing systems. It's integrated deep in there. There is a hole so small you couldn't get a needle through it. A needle wouldn't fit through that hole. And what that hole does is it sits in there, and it then allows that if there is vapor in the line, it can't create this spring effect. It allows that constant seepage. What is the net effect of this? If you don't have a bypass on your Rotax engine or an integrated bypass in your ULPower engine, in the event of ingesting air, it will take longer to purge the air. Now, let's look at simple examples of how this might happen. The number one that happens to everybody is on first start. There is air in your lines. So you run your fuel pumps, and your fuel pumps purge the lines to get up to pressure. Now, we expect that and we make provision for it. If you've got the integrated bypass or a bypass line, your priming is quicker. Now let's say that we are flying along with a 2-tank system, and we are flying on the left tank and we run out of fuel. The engine goes cough, splutter, stop, and we go, oops. We look for a field to land in, we go through our usual procedures, and we go, I ran out of fuel. We change tanks, we put our fuel pumps on, fuel pump override if required, or emergency power, or whatever system you have in your plane, and you now need that system to prime again before start will make the engine work. This, in our experience, saves you about 3 times quicker. So if it was taking 90 seconds to prime, you could be down to 30 seconds to prime. If it was taking 45 seconds to prime, down to 15 seconds. Now, imagine that you ran out of fuel on downwind coming into land. That 30 seconds of increased purging is really nice, and I think that's where people have found the integrated bypass is it's a natural lifesaver. There are other things that can happen as well. So we can experience what's called unporting. Unporting is more common in high-wing aircraft than low-wing aircraft. And this is where, as we maneuver and we're taking from a particular wing, we might have fuel in the wing, but because of an upset, we suck a little bit of air into the fuel line. That little bit of air is getting squished between the fuel from the tank, and it goes down and it goes through the pump. It might make the pump stutter for a moment as it goes through, so you'll hear the pump going brrr, 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 as the air goes through it. I practice sounds, by the way, not very well. When that air then gets over the engine, it has to purge, and that integrated bypass or the bypass line does its job. There is another case where we can get vapor. Let us say that we were travelling and we bought our fuel from a petrol station, and we purchased it in the month of February. We put Mogas in February, we went back, we thought, well, we got plenty of fuel, but because of where we fly, the weather was bad until a nice sunny day in April. We now have what we call supermarket fuel, which is generally of unknown precedence. We've got a nice warm day. We had winter fuel. Winter fuel has a different vapor pressure to summer fuel. Now we've got a warm day with a fuel of unknown quality, and we risk vapor lock. We have got a better chance of this fuel turning into vapor in the lines. Maybe we go out, we do a nice flight, we come back and land, and now the fuel above the engine has got warm. It's actually boiled. Fuel will boil over the engine when it's sitting there doing nothing, and now you come to start and your fuel starts to circulate again, and you've got other vapors or warm fuel, and you get another lump of vapor which makes its way through. Once again, this restricted bypass or your integrated bypass will do the job. It doesn't get rid of the vapor. It just enables it to purge from your system quicker. Now you know why I don't normally do videos, because I'm long and boring. But I hope that's explained better why we use a bypass line. It's not a complicated solution. I was originally the test pilot testing this in hot weather conditions, and I saw the difference it made with all the simulations of unporting tanks, with running tanks dry and restarting in flight. And therefore, if you don't have a restricted bypass or an integrated bypass, I'd strongly recommend you consider one, because you never know. One day, you might wish you had. In the meantime, you know where Metal Seagulls are. We're here to support you in keeping you flying, and thank you for your time.